I'm uh, I'm just so delighted to convene this session. You know, I was just reading the bios of our speakers today. I'm just so excited to hear of their work and be part of this. My name is Inga Heyman. I work at Edinburgh Napier University. I am co-director of the Scottish Centre for Law Enforcement and Public Health. I work very closely with Police Scotland in a number of different areas, but my background is as a mental health nurse. So I come very much from a health perspective in many things, but I've also worked for the police. So I've sort of wear a couple of different hats. I have been involved, this is my 5th LEF conference, and we were delighted to host the conference in Edinburgh in 2019. But no, we're not here to talk about me, we're here to hear from these amazing presenters, and we've got 3 fantastic presenters. And I really so pleased that Friday, the last day of the conference, is the time that we've got the heading for this presentation, which is around policy, partnerships and learning, which has, you know, of all the themes that have been coming across LEF in this last week, it's about the bringing together of policy, partnerships and learning that is underpinning the drive forward with the field of law enforcement and public health. So it's so fitting that this is a session that we're actually talking about and we're hearing from. So the 3 fantastic presenters today, they each bring a really different lens to this theme, but there are some real commonalities between our 3 speakers. They've all worked in frontline policing. And all 3 are really respected scholars and leaders in driving forward our understandings of the intersect between policy and partnership and learning. So firstly, we're going to hear from Paul Rinkoff, who is an inspector with the Toronto Police Service. Paul holds a PhD in policy studies from Ryerson University and lectures there as well in the Department of Politics and Public Administration. And Paul presents on methods used by sergeants to influence and achieve the conformance of frontline police officers in racial profiling policy. Really important piece of work right now in everything that's happening in the world at the moment. He'll explore the leadership contributions of sergeants when attempting to implement this quite perceived controversial policy. Following on from Paul, we're going to hear from Charlie Allen, who from Sydney in Australia. He's the Director of Partnerships with the Institute of Economics and Peace. Charlie is really highly respected amongst peace builders for his pioneering work and in resilience. He's equally respected in policing for his community-centred approach to police management. Unsurprisingly, he was awarded the Australian Police Medal, a division of the Order of Australia, fairly recently. So really interested to hear from Charlie. He'll be presenting on positive peace as an indicator of better economic, social and environmental performance. Finally, we're going to hear from my dear colleague, Larissa Engelman. Larissa is a really highly respected colleague at Edinburgh Napier University. She is an associate lecturer in criminology in the School of Applied Science. Larissa's research interest includes restorative justice. She's done work around violence against women, trauma-informed practice. But today she's going to present on her PhD research, which is focused on critically assessing the role of learning for police officers, the police organisation and partnerships in Scotland. And I'm really excited to hear that, because Larissa has probably missed off her bio, which I know she has, how important this work is in Scotland right now. And the idea of improved partnership work and this interface between law enforcement and public health. It's one of the top priorities for policing. And Larissa has also missed off that she's probably the most highly respected star PhD student in Scotland at the moment, but she wouldn't tell you that, but I will. So without any ado, I'm going to pass over to Paul. Just for delegates, please pop some questions in either in the chat box. We'll also be keeping an eye on the Q&As. We'll be coming to the questions at the end of the session. We have got a hard finish dead on 10:02, so we will be finishing right up on time. But with that, the questions will come at the end of the presentations, and there will be hopefully time for that. So thank you very much, and I'll pass on to Paul.
Great, thank you, Inga. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here with you today. As you can see by my attire, I'm an inspector with the Toronto Police Service. Toronto has a population of about 2.9 million people and has the largest municipal police service in Canada. And I have been a police officer for just shy of 2 decades and really enjoy the profession. So thank you for being here. I'm going to share my screen, or attempt to share. So hopefully you can see that. If I can see some nods, does that? Okay, perfect, great. So today I'll be speaking to you about some original research that I undertook as part of my PhD dissertation at Ryerson University. This particular research, published last week in the Journal of Community Safety and Wellbeing, incorporates just a few, and I emphasize just a few findings from the overall data collected. I'm looking forward to publishing many more of my findings in the future. My research focus tends to be on policy and policy analysis, but because of my professional experience, I also have a complementary interest in leadership, supervision, police culture, and race relations. So often I tend to combine these interests and dig into areas of law enforcement that are generally unexplored and sometimes sensitive to those who work and lead within the profession. My research agreements were approved both by my academic institution and the participant policing organization. And you may note that I do not refer to the participant organization by name. That is intentional, but you are welcome to guess. My primary research focus is on frontline supervisory leadership and its role and contributions to the successful rollout of policy at the street level. To properly investigate this area of scholarship, it is not only necessary to become familiar and conversant with the literature related to policy processes, policy theory, and top-down policy implementation and analysis, but also law enforcement organizational structure and culture, history, and specifically how police leadership operates. Leadership in law enforcement organizations is predominantly top-down, hyper-bureaucratic, commanding, and even militaristic. This type of leadership often functions fantastically when dealing with an extreme event or an emergency or at the scene of a homicide or mass shooting. Generally, during these pressing events, there is no time for discussion or to advantage the benefits of horizontal leadership or discuss the merits of bottom-up leadership, collaboration, or what we can accomplish when incorporating multiple perspectives. But in less pressing environments, when dealing with directives and decisions that might be unpopular, controversial, contrary to union values, conflicting with personal values, the same style of top-down bureaucratic leadership may not be as effective. Police leaders who continue to implement policies or execute decisions reliant only on the chain of command often experience policy failure. What do I mean by this? Well, what was intended to occur at the street level does not happen, and either the desired activities are modified or stymied at the front line. Why does this happen? Here I draw from the work of Lipsky and others who have highlighted that achieving appropriate responses from frontline workers in government across the public sector to policy decisions has always been a common challenge. Lipsky developed the term the street level bureaucrat, a frontline employee who has much more control and discretion over his or her actions at the street level than leaders and managers would prefer. And policing is no different. General resistance to policy implementation by police officers is common and fierce. Frontline officers often fail to get behind leadership decisions, directives, and initiatives rolled out from the top of their organizations. Now, to be clear, I'm not talking about those decisions that frontline police officers enjoy: more use of force options and technology, better vehicles, improved working conditions. It's the unpopular decisions that I am referring to. So my study aimed to examine this area of policy implementation and resistance in police organizations to further our understanding of this phenomenon. In doing so, it became clear from the literature, from my research, and from my professional experience that the contributions of frontline supervisors, namely sergeants, are absolutely critical to the successful adoption of unpopular policy decisions in police organizations. So how do we test the effect or impact of the leadership contributions of sergeants on the activities of frontline police officers? Well, if you are a policy scholar, you would probably suggest that one identifies a policy environment that is contextual, meaning that there are variable factors of influence at play, factors that may inhibit or hinder the rollout of policy at the front line. So let's look at the policy environment that was explored in this research. First, we must break down the leader's environment. Frontline police work is unique and creates challenges for sergeants, especially when assessing and achieving conformity. I will not get into all of these challenges, but I will bring to the forefront aspects such as complexity of the role of a police officer, work task ambiguity, the subjectivity of police officer responses to citizen needs, low visibility, large spans of control, and the high levels of discretionary choices that officers enjoy in both assigned and unassigned time. Second, we must consider the policy under investigation. For this research, I selected a racial profiling policy, one recently implemented in a large North American municipal police service. But why the racial profiling policy? Well, from a socially significant perspective, as discussed throughout this week at LEPH, racial profiling has been characterized as the most recent expression of hostility that defines the historical and problematic relationship between the police and racialized communities. Due to the tenacious advocacy from a variety of stakeholders, many police organizations across North America have implemented these types of policies designed to prohibit racial profiling by officers. These implementations are critical given that racial profiling policies have been reported to promote more racially equitable policing and improve the relationship between police officers and racialized communities. But in addition to its social significance, it is the perceived controversy of this policy held by some frontline officers that acts to hinder successful policy implementation and provides an opportunity to further inform our understanding of how sergeants, acting as a facilitating layer of management, direct, control, and secure compliance in ways that may be critical for achieving planned outcomes. You may be asking yourself, why is racial profiling policy controversial among frontline officers? Well, many rank and file officers have suggested that its unpopular implementation comes at a cost to public safety, instilling perceived controversy regarding its practice. This observation is consistent with other implementations of racial profiling policies by police organizations across North America. With respect to the specific policy under investigation, its measures are designed to regulate voluntary police-citizen interactions to discourage bias and discrimination. For instance, under this policy, police officers are required to inform citizens of their legal rights at the commencement of an interaction and provide receipts to citizens at the conclusion of their interaction. So you may understand why this may be unpopular for some officers at the street level. So now that I've discussed the policy environment, I will briefly discuss my methods. Patrol sergeants, so not station house or administrative sergeants, across a police organization of larger than 5,000 officers were interviewed. Cross-representation was important to ensure differing degrees of resistance or conformity to the policy were captured. Interviews were semi-structured and face-to-face. Each sergeant represented a different division or precinct. A survey questionnaire was also administered to the participants to supplement the data collected from the interviews. Thematic analysis was conducted using in vivo software. Data from the interview and supplemental questionnaire showed empirical support for the methods used by sergeants to achieve compliance of frontline officers with the racial profiling policy. These methods were auditing, being present, training, encouraging, rewarding, and disciplining. Let me provide one example of a finding. This slide represents the leadership method encouraging. Participants explained that if they spoke with frontline officers in motivational ways and provided examples of the benefits of conforming to the racial profiling policy, they observed that their officers were more driven to follow the rules. This slide illustrates one of these statements. And for the interest of time, I won't go through it all, but please have a read on your own time. From the analysis and with further theoretical integration, I was able to theorize through this research that sergeants select methods that are used to achieve the compliance of frontline officers with the racial profiling policy by blending the payoffs of two leadership approaches, an authoritative leadership approach and a supportive leadership approach. And I encourage you to read my research publication, which further accounts for the blending of these two leadership approaches when leading in law enforcement, particularly at the front lines. Now, this last slide is a figure of the integration of the two leadership approaches, authoritative and supportive, with the 6 methods used by sergeants to achieve compliance of frontline officers with the policy. Now, what's a policy paper without policy implications? So there are several mentioned in my publication that I propose are applicable to law enforcement leaders, oversight committees, policy writers, legislators, and public safety professionals. I will briefly highlight 3 of them. First, in a police organization, particularly at the front lines, there is a conflux of structural and cultural factors that may facilitate or hinder a sergeant's capacity to ensure frontline officers conform to policy decisions. Consequently, when implementing policies perceived to be controversial, directives should be contextual and environment specific. Second, it is important to recognize that sergeants are crucial for communicating and translating new policies into action. Police leaders and executives ought to consult sergeants at the outset of the development of a policy. And third, and specific to racial profiling policies, the findings demonstrate that when sergeants are present during a police-citizen interaction, frontline officers are more likely to conform to policy decisions, improving levels of compliance when it matters the most. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation today. And of course, a special thank you to the sergeants and leaders who participated in the study. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have later today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. That I've already got a list of questions, but we will come back to them later on. Can I ask if you can? Perfect. Thank you. We might move. Thank you. So it was so interesting. Thank you. And it's so applicable, that work, to so many other areas. So, you know, it'll be interesting to unpick that a little bit later on. I'm going to pass it on to Charlie now and let you, poor Charlie, it's 1 o'clock in the morning in Sydney. So I'll let you crack on.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thumbs up, hopefully you can see my slide display and also hear me. Thank you, Paul, for your presentation. My policing career was some 38 years and ended up as a superintendent. My formal study was in police leadership, so I enjoyed your presentation, Paul. Thank you very much. So I moved from, I guess, peace officer to peace builder, and now work for the Institute for Economics and and Peace. My work is really about operationalising the research of the Institute for Economics and Peace. Predominantly, my area of operation, if you like, is Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, Southern Asia, and Oceania. So today, I just want to whet your appetite for the research of the Institute for Economics and Peace, and whet your appetite for the application of this research. And it really is practitioner-focused research. The Institute for Economics and Peace is an independent, not-for-profit think tank, and you can see here a suite of our reports. The most known being the Global Peace Index, which I'll touch on very briefly today. The Global Terrorism Index is probably our second most known report. The Positive Peace Report is the work that I predominantly focus on, and I'll touch on that today as well. So what do we do? Effectively, we're in the business of measuring peace. And not only do we measure peace, but we put a cost on the economic benefit of peace and the economic impact of violence. Why do we do this work? It's pretty simple. You can't manage what you don't measure. Prior to us doing this work, which started some 15 years ago, it wasn't being done. So the Global Peace Index is accepted as the global measure for peacefulness. Institute for Economics and Peace, we're headquartered here in Sydney, but you can see we're an international organisation with offices around the globe. And as I said, our research we position as practitioner-focused research. So what is important for us that the research is accessible, that it's attainable, that it's practical and usable and readable. So we work very hard at getting our research out here, and you can. It's often said that we're a good research organisation, but a better communications organisation. So you can see here the phenomenal reach we get with our research, with some 16 billion media impressions for the last 12 months. A social media reach of nearly a billion people. We're referenced across a wide range of articles and books and the like, used for a range of programs, particularly peace and conflict related programs. Our research is picked up by multilateral organisations. You can see there's a couple listed there: OECD, Commonwealth Secretariat, World Bank, but also picked up at grassroots level by practitioners. So if you're going to measure something, you certainly got to start with a definition. The Institute for Economics and Peace uses two definitions for peace. A negative definition being the absence of violence or the absence of fear of violence, and we use that definition to build the Global Peace Index. And the more interesting and more applicable definition being the attitudes, or a positive definition of peace, being the attitudes, institutions and structures that create and sustain peaceful societies. So a simple way to think of this is that negative definition is about looking at what is broken within communities, what are the broken bits, and counting the broken bits. That positive definition is really about, well, what is it that needs to be present within a community to make it more peaceful. So I mentioned that the Global Peace Index, we're up to, well, this year will be the 2021 Global Peace Index, and will be the 15th edition of the Global Peace Index. It uses that negative definition of peace being the absence of violence, the absence of fear of violence, and what our researchers do is aggregate a range of data sets, and we don't, and this is macro level research. We don't look at a country and say that a country is peaceful or not peaceful, but we rank countries based on their relative peacefulness, from the most peaceful in the globe to the least peaceful. You can see we rank 163 countries, which clearly isn't all of the countries, but the countries we rank covers off on pretty much, covers off on 99.7% of the globe's population. As I said, we're in the business of aggregating data, and for the Global Peace Index, we aggregate 23 different data sets. And those data sets fall into three domains. And here's a really quick breakdown of those domains. You can see there's 6 measures there of domestic or international conflict. So expecting a peace index that measures of conflicts would be aggregated. So picks up battlefield deaths as a result of conflict, and those style of indicators. Then the internal indicators, if you like, the measures societal safety and security, and that picks up indicators such as refugees, IDPs, impact of terrorism, homicide rates, crime rates, incarceration rates. And as you'd expect, there's 7 measures of militarisation. So picks up indicators such as MILEX or military expenditure as a percentage, as a standardised percentage of GDP, number of armed personnel. So that range of indicators, 23 indicators, is aggregated to build a country score for each country in the Global Peace Index. So what does the Global Peace Index look like? If you colour the world based on peacefulness, is what it looks like. The red countries being the least peaceful, and the deep green countries being the most peaceful. All of our research is freely available on our website, the Institute for Economics and Peace, the Vision of Humanity website. This map on the website is interactive. You can hover over a country, see what its position is in the ranking, and see the data sets that sit underneath a particular country. The lovely part of having 15 years of research is we can look at trend data, whether that's country level, regional, break it down into domains. There's many ways we can cut and dice this research. So what are the key highlights for the 2020 Global Peace Index? In 2020, the globe became less peaceful. It decreased in peacefulness by 0.34%. Some of you may think, oh, that's pretty small. That's not statistically significant. I assure you it is when you're looking at an average of global peacefulness. And it's noted there that this is the 9th deterioration in the past 12 years. So what drove a deterioration of peacefulness in the last 12 years? I should mention that 81 countries became more peaceful in 2020. 80 countries deteriorated in peacefulness. I should note that the 2020 data set doesn't pick up the impact of COVID. We'll start to see that coming through in the 21 Global Peace Index, and I can assure you that COVID has had a negative impact on a range of peace indicators. So looking at the 2020 data, the improvements were driven by decreased impact of terrorism. Terrorism has steadily come off since 2014, which is aligned with the decline of ISIS. Decreasing homicides rates, which has been a global trend for quite a period of time, except in Latin America, where that is the opposite. Increased weapons imports and exports. So that's what's driven the improvements. Deteriorations are being driven by a political terror scale, increasing refugees and IDPs, and intensity of internal conflict. So as I said, we've been doing this for a period of time. We can look at trends, and this is just to whet the appetite on some of that trend data. So staying at the macro level, globally, this is an indication of that top trend line is the trend in peacefulness over the last 12 years. Don't get excited with the line going up. A higher number means less peaceful. So that is demonstrating a decline in peacefulness over the last 12 years. And you can see in that bottom line, that bottom bar chart, in the last 12 years, we've only had 3 years where the globe has become more peaceful. The remainder of the years, it has become less peaceful. So 81 countries have become less peaceful over the last decade. 79 countries have become more peaceful. The gross number over the last decade is the globe has decreased in peacefulness by 2.5%. You might look at those country numbers and go, well, gee, they're pretty close, 81 to 79. But the reality is the countries that have become less peaceful have done so at a far greater extent. So what we're seeing is this rising inequity in peace, which is demonstrated in these trend lines. You can see the most peaceful countries have continued to trend to become more peaceful, but the least peaceful countries have become less peaceful at a far greater rate, which is a concerning trend. It's a bit like that adage, the rich are becoming richer and the poor are getting poorer. It's the same for peacefulness. The least peaceful becoming less peaceful. So positive peace, you may remember that I said that we measure peace by two indicators, two definitions, that second definition being the positive definition, the attitudes, institutions and structures that create and sustain peaceful societies. And what we do is also build an index using indicators to form that positive definition, and once again rank countries from the most peaceful to the least peaceful. So that positive peace report is built by studying the most peaceful countries on the globe. So we take a view, if you want to understand how to build a peaceful country, build a peaceful community, there's no point in studying violence, which is effectively what the Global Terrorism Index, the Global Peace Index is. It's a measure of conflict and violence. But from that piece of work, we know which of the most peaceful countries have looked at thousands of data sets to build an understanding of what is it that makes those peaceful countries, those peaceful community, the most peaceful countries, and through that we've been able to build the positive peace report. Okay, so what we know about the most peaceful countries, and we identified some 24 indicators which are aggregated in the positive peace report. We're able to build this framework. And so these are the conditions, if you like, that need to be present and operating as a system for countries and communities to be peaceful. There's no surprises when you look around those 8 pillars, as we call them. That's what you'd expect to be happening in a peaceful country, peaceful community. But what our research does is demonstrates that empirically. And it's interesting when we look at positive peace, we know that high positive peace countries perform better across a range of indicators and indicators of economic indicators, indicators of well-being, environmental indicators, and also high positive peace countries perform better with development goals. They perform better with the Millennial Development Goals and are doing so with the Sustainable Development Goals. Okay, that's what the globe looks like when it's coloured using that positive peace index. The light blue countries being the least peaceful, and the deep blue countries being the more peaceful. Okay, this is be the last data chart I share with you, and this is just a breakdown of the domains of the positive peace index, those 3 domains being the attitudes, institutions and structures. And what is interesting, remembering that negative peace has declined, positive peace has actually improved over the last decade. And it's been driven by increases in attitudes, improved structures and improved institutions. And what has declined over the decade has been attitudes. So I'll leave it there. I did mention that our approach to peace building is a systems thinking approach, and what we do is apply that positive peace framework, whether we're working at community level or the policy level, with an intent to nudge social systems to be more peaceful. So it's a systems approach to peace building. So I hope that I have done enough this morning or this afternoon to whet your appetite to have a look at our research. I encourage you as to go to our website, Vision of Humanity. All of our research is freely available there. We have online Positive Peace Academy, so you can certainly dive deeper into this. And we also have an ambassador program. All of our programs are free and available to be used. And I guess, for me, the attraction to this work is coming from policing background and moving into peace building is evidence-based decision making or evidence-based programmatic work and the application of that research. So thank you for the time today, and I'll hand over to Larissa.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Fascinating work. Fascinating work. I'm gonna just let Larissa share her, or do you need to share slides? No. Yes.
Yeah, I recorded it, so hopefully that's that. Is that okay if I get started? Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to today's session. I'm so happy to be here and be part of such a great panel. And I look forward to share some of my emerging findings from my ongoing PhD project with you today, and hopefully have some time for a discussion with everyone at the end. My name is Larissa Engelman, and I'm a third-year PhD student from Edinburgh Napier University in beautiful Scotland. I'm also serving Special Constable with Police Scotland, working as a response officer on a voluntary basis in the city centre of Edinburgh. Since I've started working for Police Scotland, I have experienced firsthand the types of calls response officers attend on a daily basis and the drastic need for more meaningful engagement with learning, closer partnership working, a better understanding of services and between services, and the increased need for shared learning environments. So, what do we actually know about police officer learning and development? Or maybe it's more about what we don't know. We don't know what learning and development is the most effective for police officers, and there's little agreement in the literature on best practice in this area. This is why officers are trained and educated to various different levels throughout their careers and across the world. It's important, obviously, to take into account the context and also the fact that we don't actually agree on what good policing actually looks like. However, what we do know is that a fair and supportive learning environment is linked to perceptions of organizational justice. We also know that feelings of organizational injustice, such as unfair distribution of opportunities and learning and development opportunities, can, as Charman and Bennett have found, lead to voluntary resignations from the police. Furthermore, we know that higher education is often seen as a lever to develop police professionalization and develop a better educated police officer that can integrate theory and practice and understand the wider impact of their role in society and with partners. We also know that continuous professional development and lifelong learning is key to address the ever more complex policing role. Lastly, we also know what we want, right? We want reflective practitioners as identified by Schoen in the 80s with the goal of having a reflective capacity that is intuitive, habitual, and consistent. Supported by a police force that commits to the idea of the learning organization that is agile and flexible and ready to respond to the challenges of the 21st century together with other services while supporting and empowering its own workforce and continuously learning. Police Scotland already considered itself to be a learning organization, and my study took a closer look at their commitment to this concept. So, the aim of my project was to critically assess the role and value of learning for police officers and the police organisation in Scotland from different viewpoints in the light of what we know and don't know about police learning so far. To achieve this, I have interviewed 33 police officers across ranks and years of service. I've conducted a survey with police officers across Scotland with 381 responses in the end. I have interviewed 15 partner professionals from justice social work, third sector to community safety, the National Health Service, education, and other criminal justice backgrounds. And I've conducted focus groups with policing students from Edinburgh Napier University, studying on one of the first policing degrees available in Scotland, planning to join Police Scotland after graduation. Data collection took place between October 2019 and February 2021, and I've recently shared a report with emerging findings and recommendations with Police Scotland, and if you are interested in that, I'm happy to share that with you after the conference. In this presentation, I will focus on some of the key emerging findings coming out from the data analysis, firstly looking at the availability of development opportunities for new staff and also current staff. As you can see from the bar chart presented here, over 60% of officers disagreed with the statement that they were satisfied with the continuous professional development opportunities available for their role. Many officers interviewed have argued that they have not received any training that was not operationally mandatory for their role or their rank, and that if they've received training, that was often linked to a significant delay, often making it less relevant for them. So that includes things like the first line manager's course, for example. The lack of available development opportunities becomes critical when transitioning between roles and ranks that are not similar to each other, right? So officers were often ill prepared to start a new position and had little support to adapt to the new environment. This usually starts at the beginning of a police officer's career, as this quote here from a constable level officer with less than 3 years experience illustrates. They said, "I didn't really have a tutor constable much, purely because of resources. I was only paired with my tutor for maybe a couple of months, and then I started working with different people, which made it a little bit more difficult as well, because those people didn't know what I knew or what I didn't know, and obviously they'd happily help me if I would have known what to ask." This was not an isolated experience, and as the Home Office report in 2002 has stated, if informal learning and learning on the job is one of the main modes of learning in the police, which we all know it tends to be, this needs to be effectively supported through consistent mentoring and monitoring by tutor constables that have received quality training and gone through a rigorous selection process, as well as supported by leadership positions. This is not currently the case in Scotland, with tutor constables having a one-day short training course, often done after they've already started tutoring. They're often just out of probation themselves, and as this officer has argued, probationers often only have very few shifts together with their tutor before being on their own learning journey, often not knowing what they need to learn to be a good police officer. Additionally, this focus on learning on the job and on your own while starting new roles has a largely negative impact on partnership working, as this third sector partner illustrates here. The lack of support from Police Scotland when officers, in their own words, get dumped into a new role leads to a loss of learning and relationships, which take months to build up again, resulting in projects from previous role holders being discontinued because of a lack of handover or a lack of understanding of the new role that they're going into, and a loss of organizational memory. Furthermore, it adds to the pressure that both police officers feel when they go into a new role, not knowing what they're supposed to be doing, but also the pressure on the partner agencies to rebuild that trust and rebuild that knowledge and rebuild those projects again and again. So it's knowledge that this officer should really have before they start a new role. Although officers are generally interested in learning and development for their role and preparing themselves for new roles within policing, this lifelong learning and CPD is not always supported and encouraged by the organization. As the graph here illustrates, there's a large variety of agreement and disagreement about whether Police Scotland motivates their officers to engage with ongoing training and development opportunities. Additionally, the quote here from a constable level officer illustrates the focus on the individual and driving their own learning. Nobody encourages you if you don't put yourself forward, generally, unless you have a backer and unless you find it and apply for it yourself. Nobody's going to tell me about it. This is in stark contrast to what I've found from partner agencies, especially, but not only those who have been professionalized already in the UK and who are graduate professions. As this Justice Social Worker illustrates, we have a 3-year registration reviews, and you could be asked to evidence your learning at any time. So you have to constantly keep track of everything. And in terms of your professional development, it's just constant. Partner agencies such as Justice Social Work and others such as Health and Education, they illustrated a cyclical process between formal higher education, research, their own learning, and their practice. And they talked a lot about how they continuously engage in learning and reflecting from different sources, and are encouraged by line management to integrate all of this into their practice. Officers, on the other hand, when talking about engagement with research, for example, they clearly stated how this is largely kept separate from their policing career, and that they either already had negative experience when trying to integrate the two, or expect Police Scotland not to be interested unless it is linked to current priorities. And they're lucky enough to have a manager that understands the value of higher education. So this suggests that there's a lack of diversity of thought, right? And a lack of openness to new ideas across the organization. So officers often feel that they cannot share their learning from outside of policing, including that which comes from shared learning environments with partners. There are also no clear systems and structures in place to recognize and embed such learning, or to use it for talent identification across the organization to fill skill gaps. Interviews for ranks and roles focus on experiential learning and practice examples rather than experience from before joining or since joining, which was external to the organization, often making officers feel that the organization isn't interested in the person behind the police officer. Over 50% of officers, for example, disagreed with the statement that Police Scotland values academic knowledge and uses it in practice. As this line manager here illustrated, they need to get away from that culture and that arrogance of, you've not been in the uniform for 25 years, what do you know? Participants suggest that a culture shift is needed to be more open and receptive to other views, and this was echoed by partner agencies who often felt that police had a certain agenda and way of doing things, and it was difficult to break through this at times. Furthermore, this partner illustrates here, I think Police Scotland learn from the things they want to learn from. So they learn, I think, their learning organisation when it comes to avoiding risk. I'm not sure they are learning organisation for a lot of other things. Officers echoed this and felt that a lot of training and learning was based on covering the organization's back and providing tick box learning packages rather than meaningful learning that improves officer practice and increases officer confidence and competence. Charman argued that the fear of doing the wrong thing can lead to the development of a blue code of self-protection. This leads to an unbalanced focus on learning dictated by self-protection rather than empowerment, innovation, and developing a workforce able to anticipate and adapt to future challenges. Obviously, this needs to change if the police service is to move from reactive policing to proactive policing that is needed in the 21st century, and also to be able to work with partners who clearly value different kinds of knowledge. And I think I'll stop it here so then we have a little bit of time for a couple of questions maybe.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. Amber, can I just ask if we got, is there a session on after this, or if we go over, is it a problem? Could you just double check for me, please, Amber, if there is a session after this?
Sure, I'll definitely look. I'm not
Thank
sure.
You. Can I just, is there any questions? Please raise your hand, or you can just put it in the chat if anyone's got any questions. I'm so sorry we've gone so close to time. Just as there are questions, I've got a couple of questions that I'm quite interested in, which is a bit selfish. Paul, can I just ask, you said that, you know, in the 6 methods that you showed on in your wheel, was there one that was more expansive than the other, or were they all quite equal?
So they're key methods. So when the analysis was done, obviously these were the top 6, and they were separated there was a greater gap between these 6 and some of the other smaller ones. In terms of each one of them, they all function in different ways. Some of them are opposite. So if you look at the themes such as rewarding and disciplining, they're opposing. Each of them have their benefits in terms of getting officers to basically follow the rules is probably the easiest way of saying it. So I don't think anyone stands out. I think they all work together. I don't think any of them are mutually exclusive. And again, when you look at each theme, they fall under these 2 larger leadership approaches. And that's what I've dug into within the research, is kind of looking at how a blend of these 2 approaches using these key themes advantages the ability for the sergeant to get these officers to conform to the racial profiling policy.
Okay. Oh, hold on. Jen said yes, and we need to end now. Damn, I've got questions. Oh, so sorry. Yeah, we do need to finish. Oh, I am so sorry. Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate it. I hope you do not mind. And delegates that are listening on, our presenters have said, please, you can contact them directly if you've got any questions. They, value those questions. I certainly will be pinging some off to both of you, to all of you. So thank you so much for taking the time to present. Your work is fascinating. And I'm just sorry we didn't have more time, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Inga.
Thank
Thanks,
you, everyone.
everyone.
Great presentations. Thank you.